This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. Hello everybody, my name is Benjamin Wheeler, and today I have with me again, the one, the only,
Adam Price. Hey guys.
and we are back for another episode of Canadian Highlander Hidden Gems, and today we will be focusing on Ice Age block, which includes Ice Age, Alliances, and the newer set, but hopefully still old school enough to keep our viewer base, Coldsnap.
Nice. So, let's suit up, put on those snowshoes, because it's about to get frosty.
It's going to get real frosty. So to give a kind of an overview of this set, or rather this block, they had a bit of a better understanding on power level, ignoring necropotence, obviously. I think this block has a lot of really cool cards that gets ignored because the sets aren't as iconic as Alpha, Beta, Arabian Nights, but they are still kind of known, People know about Ice Age and Alliances, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing is, too, they were starting to get a hold of where they wanted to go with the lore. And so lore is like one of the biggest things that actually impacts design space, too, right? So you start to see like Magic really formulating its own identity, which is really cool.
We're going to start off with a card that it isn't, a part of the alphabetical process, but I figured we'd get this out of the way since it's so important to this block and to some of the cards we're including. And of course, as you can tell by the image in front of you, it's going to be Snowlands. Adam, how do you feel about Snowlands?
I love Snowlands. So when I first arrived on the scene as a Highlander player, very, just hard in my hands, young boy in the Magic scene, just a fistful of snow-covered swamps. And that's hasn't changed. I still play snow-covered basics. I only own snow-covered basics. I do not own a single non-snow-covered basic. So, yeah, I love them.
I'm also in the point where I only own snow-covered basics, and it's gone to me in a lot of trouble trying to enter in tournaments where it's illegal, no matter how much I argue with the judge. But I think by now people know how much I fucking adore these lands, from the art, from the theme, to the flexibility that they bring, which seems weird to say about a basic land, but these cards can interact with a variety of cards that have very powerful effects, be them stuff like Gifts Ungiven, stuff like Tainted Pact,
Yeah.
Even, there are creatures and other cards on this list that require snow mana, and there's really no downside to playing them aside from a couple of land destruction spells that will, we'll cover those when we get to them.
There's one card that comes to mind. This was sort of the first reason why I got into using snow-covered swamps and islands to begin with, but Extraplanar Lens is like it's a Cold Stone Creamery classic because of its effect. Obviously, if you have snow-covered lands and your opponent doesn't, it's not a reciprocal effect. So that's just one of the sort of like unique cards that make use of snow-covered lands. I'm actually not sure why we're doing this, because then other people will start playing snow-covered lands, which is what we want, but we also don't want it. So never mind, I want it. It's fine.
Adam, we've hoisted our own petard at this point.
Yeah.
But I think we've hammered home that these lands are just ultimately superior than other basics. And I know some of you might be attached to your unhinged lands or your beta lands, and mad respect to the beta lands, unhinged can go suck it for all I care. But these cards, they've got the beautiful art, they've got better sounding names, better applications, and applications not just within this block, as Adam mentioned. Cards like Extraplanar Lens, and other cards that they printed that they thought, nobody's going to remember Snowlands, so might as well print this. Let's start getting into actual Magic cards. So
yeah.
First up, we have Altar of Bone. Now, the name isn't as cool as Throne of Bone, but there aren't many cards that have such a cool name as this. So it's 1 white, 1 green, a sorcery. As an additional cost, you sacrifice a creature, and then you search your library for a creature card and put into your hand. So it's an Eladamri's Call at sorcery speed that requires you to sacrifice a creature. So already this card's pretty good. I mean, finding a creature for 2 mana, that's quite powerful.
Yeah, this card's nuts. The other thing that's really important to note about this card is it does see play again in Highlander. Like previously in our first episode of Hidden Gems, we were talking about Ankh of Mishra seeing a lot of play. Altar of Bones sees play. I love this card. It provides a wicked sacrifice outlet too, in colors that generally want to see those sort of outlets. Yeah, this card is actually just really strong and an insane tutor. There's not really much more to say about it. It's just an insane tutor that also has an upside or a downside depending on how you're building your deck, but you build it with an upside.
There are decks that want to play Eladamri's Call that aren't going to play Altar of Bone, but all the decks that want to play Altar of Bone are also playing Eladamri's Call. The sacrifice effect, as you said, you don't necessarily want it in like a creature value kind of deck unless there's a very specific combo attached, which the first thing that comes to my mind is something like Sandra Bullock.
Bridesmaid of the Year is
Sandra Bullock on the blind side.
Also known as Pattern Rector or Protean Hulk kind of Birthing Pod combo.
Yeah, you definitely want a Rector under that sector.
That's some gorgeous...
Synergy!
Yeah, there we go. As you said, see some play, but could probably see more. Up next, this is a card that it's so simple, it's so cute, but it's surprisingly powerful. We have Boreal Centaur. Maybe powerful is not the best word. As a 2-mana 2/2, that's pretty boring. But it has kind of this Root Walla ability in which you pay a snow mana and it gets +1/+1 until end of turn, but you can only use it once per turn. So this is where playing snow lands over other basics, this is where it becomes relevant. Because if I'm playing a mono-green aggressive stompy list where I want as much power for as little mana as possible, this is just another 2-drop in that list, right? It's 3 power at 2 mana, providing that you have the snow mana.
Yeah, this is like a Watch Wolf, basically, right? Like, I mean, obviously it's like a Watch Wolf with an upkeep cost, but you're always looking for just like more of those 2-mana 3/3s, and this is another one to sort of provide you critical mass of them. And it has a snow cost in it, which we've already described is dank as all hell, so...
Which is really the real reason to play this. Super simple card, super simple applications, but really good, and I would go as far as to say necessary, you know?
Yep, I would agree.
Bounty of the Hunt, aka the Green Force of Will. 3 and 2 green. It's not as good as Force of Will. Let's get that out of the way. 3 and 2 green, as an alternative cost, you may remove a green card in your hand from the game. So you don't have to lose a life. That's fantastic. You put 3 1/1 counters, you distribute them as you'd like, and then at the end of turn they're removed. So this is kind of weird. You effectively can give +3/+3 divided how you'd like.
Or not. Like, they can all go on the same creature.
Yeah. So you can do, 2+2/+2 on one, +1/+1 on another. But they're in the form of counters, which in turn get removed at end of turn, because Wizards likes to fuck with people like that. This is a card that is known, again, but I haven't seen this card since Mike Harrison attacked me with a Yavimaya Ants, and then Bounty of the Hunted it, and I died. This card hasn't appeared in Highlander for quite some time, and there are certainly decks that are looking for this.
I'm sorry, can you clarify, do these counters fall off?
They do come off. It's a temporary effect. Basically, it's just a kind of poor wording for giving the creatures +X/+X until EOT.
I think you play this in Infect, like, it's free. It's free? I think I'm just going to say that one more time. It's free. I would play this in Infect. It's just +3/+3 to one of your dudes for,
It's a free pump spell.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this seems really strong in that deck list. I'm not sure if I'll play it in another deck list, but I would put it in there like nobody's business. Sometimes that just wins you the game, right?
Yeah. I might see it in the hyper-aggressive 1-drops plus the domain pump spells kind of deck, because it's a free pump spell, essentially. You do obviously have to pitch a card, but in the decks where you're going to play pump spells, I imagine you're playing green, and I imagine you'd want to play this.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have Burnout up next. This is a card that Adam pleaded me to include in this, and being the forgiving soul I am, being the charitable individual, I decided to throw it in.
May I, Ben?
Oh, by all means.
Burnout, 1 colorless, 1 red, instant, counter target instant spell if it's blue, draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Gotcha. This card's awesome.
The original gotcha.
Yeah, it's the original gotcha. No, it obviously goes in the list that are running Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast. Strong effect, draws you a card, wicked art, like unstoppably badass art, and Giable art, you know? Who knew?
She supplies some of the best flavor text in the game.
Definitely.
I like that, correct me if I'm wrong, it says counter the spell if it's blue.
You can still draw a card regardless of whether or not the color is blue. So if they play a black spell, cast Burnout, whatever, it's not countered and you draw a card.
I mean, obviously it's a narrow card. You really just want this against the blue control decks, or the blue decks that are going to be playing instants, which are all of them.
Yeah.
But if you draw it against a dead matchup, you have a chance to cycle it.
You just cycle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this card. I've grown on this card, I should say. I think these kind of cards have their place. Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast, etc. But I didn't admittedly know about this card until you mentioned it to me, Adam, about a month ago, 2 months ago or so.
Yeah, that was in my Burnt Toast list, which was just basically like a red-white stacks variant. And didn't want to play like 1-cost ones because of Chalice. So Burnout was just like, and I mean, this is the kind of swag that lists like that really want to play around with. So I threw it in, and it was fun.
The kind of cards where you want to go hard, you know, or go home.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. I like Burnout. I've played it, and yeah, if it's dead, it's cycle. So it's cool.
I'm a little burnt out from talking about this card, so let's go to Contagion. It's a 5-mana instant. This is the Black Force of Will. This is the one where you still have to pay the 1 life. And this is a very powerful removal spell that sees some play, or used to see more play. But obviously, as time passes on, creatures become better. Removal spells have to become a little bit better. We've kind of stopped because they realized having cards like Doomblade in limited formats sucks, but I mean, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about a free instant in black that you get to put the classiest fucking counters on any number of target creatures. So it's 3 and 2 black instant. You can pay 1 life and exile a black card instead of paying the cost. Put 2 -2 -1 counters on any number of target creatures. That is very powerful. That is something that, you know, black does get multiple cards like this. You get access to Snuff Out and whatnot. It's in that category of a relevant effect that's quite good, that is flexible, and
the following advertisement is intended for Jim Booney only.
It's free. It's free real estate for you, Jim.
It's free real estate.
Yeah, and unlike Bounty, those counters do stick around. This card is interesting in that I think when you're using this as removal, it's -4, -2, and when otherwise, you know, maybe the way you're using this is to just reduce the overall power of the creatures that are on board. But yeah, I think this card is interesting, and I think that free removal is something that always needs to be looked at, you know?
It's neat to see this as a combat trick in black aggressive decks too, where you acknowledge that, you know, you're not giving them -2 to their toughness, so there's a chance that if you use it on multiple creatures, you're not killing them. But if you're using it as a combat trick, similar to kind of Bounty of the Hunt, black aggressive decks, typically their creatures don't have high amount of toughness. So being able to nix the power level of whatever they're brawling with ends up creating way more profitable trades, I'd like to think. So I'd like to see more of this card, obviously, especially in aggressive black decks, or even in the kind of like black-blue, I'm looking to cast Tasigur or Gurmag Angler as soon as possible, because it's a free spell that fills the yard. I mean, it does things that those kind of decks want to do, you know? Cryoclasm. 2 and a red, sorcery, destroy target plains or island, Cryoclasm deals 3 damage to that land's controller. There are a lot of islands in Highlander. I think we touched on that with Tsunami in the last episode. There are also a fair amount of plains. And while you wouldn't want to run a card like Flash Fires, you would probably want to run this. Because even if they don't have islands, they might have plains. I mean, statistically speaking, if they don't have islands, they probably have plains. And statistically speaking, that statement is probably incorrect. But
Okay.
being able, it's a 3-mana LD spell, which, you know, we don't get those anymore. And being able to deal 3 damage to them, it's always a nice touch, but really what I like about this is that it targets land types that are, you know, very popular, as well as being able to kill off a lot of planeswalkers. I mean, think about it. If they landed Jace, if they landed Jace and you're on the LD deck, you're probably doing it wrong already. But being able to get it down and, you know, get their island while they're tapped out and kill off their planeswalker, that's pretty damn good.
This card is flexible. It is right there with the standard sort of land destruction sorceries in terms of its CMC. Nice part about this is it isn't super red dependent, unlike, you know, like Pillage, for example, is a one that costs double red. So you can very much play this in a list that's running like green-red land destruction. Yeah, no, I think the effect is really strong. It wants to be in more aggressive lists, but yeah, and obviously targeting islands is really relevant. Targeting plains, less relevant, but still important. So this definitely will hit something for sure. So yeah, Cryoclasm is pretty sweet.
The art on this is hilarious because the gentleman on the right he's falling like face first. Like he's just gotten f***ed by this crevasse that is being created. Whereas the guy on the left, he looks like he was safe. Like he didn't actually fall, but it's like his intention is like, oh shit, my buddy's falling, I'll save him. And he jumped in thinking it would have some kind of, you know, effect.
He's got a very much like surfs up like stand, you know? He's like, whoa, surfs up, dude.
He looks like he's surfing on that ice block. I bet if we did a quick Google search of Cryoclasm altars, there would be one where this dude is just, you know, catching a gnarly wave.
You're gonna have to put Dick Dale in post here, for sure.
Just throwing some Dick Dale. Shoutouts to Dick Dale.
Dick Dale.
Diabolic Vision. A black and a blue, a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put one of them into your hand, and then put the remaining 4 on top of your library in any order. Adam, this is a card that you prefer a lot more than I do. I like this card, but you really like this card.
Yeah, I do like Diabolic Vision quite a bit because it combines 2 of my favorite colors and an effect I enjoy. I think I unfairly compare this to Impulse quite a bit, which it's not. But this card is pretty strong. It does give you more information than similar effects for less mana. So it's quite an interesting card. I think that there is a place this wants to be. Where I found this card existed was in Robin's Storm list, which I'm not sure if he's still running Diabolic Vision. I know that at the time he was, and I just remember being really impressed with it, and still am. I am impressed with this card. It's not Impulse, but you do get to see a lot. You get a lot of information out of Diabolic Vision.
You also have in decks like that, if you're running, you know, a 5-color variant, or even 2-color to 3-color variants, you're going to be running a lot of fetch lands, or other shuffle effects. So while you might not always have them, being able to get that best card out of the 5 and then shuffling away the rest is kind of nice. And even then, if you can't, being able to kind of stack the deck is not something that you would want to play independently. I don't think you'd want to play Index by any means in Highlander, but it's just kind of a nice add-on to this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. To touch on the art, this art is hilarious. The art in Ice Age block is fantastic. It really sticks to the thematic side of everything is covered with snow and ice. But I don't know why they have this kind of Slender Man dude in here.
Yeah.
Is he just like one of Lim-Dul's kind of...
Oh yeah, he's totally doing Lim-Dul's bidding. I mean, shout out to Lim-Dul. I think that's one of the cooler and well-designed bad guys in Magic's lore.
Aside from Dr. Yawgmoth?
Mr. Dr. Yawgmoth, yeah, totally.
Fun fact, Yawgmoth is a doctor.
Yep, doctor, and also human.
Also human. Moving on. Fire Covenant. Holy shit, this card's a house. Adam, if you have the Oracle text, can you read this out? Because I believe it's an additional cost, but I'm not entirely sure.
Let me just bring this up on the old the text here. All right, so Fire Covenant is 1 black, and then Rakdos mana.
You can't win them all, Adam.
It's instant. As an additional cost to cast Fire Covenant, you pay X life. And then Fire Covenant deals X damage divided as you choose any number of target creatures.
To me, this seems like the Hellfire that you can play. I mean, you have to play black to play this card.
Yeah.
But this is like a one-sided Wrath of God to me.
Totally.
And this is a card that you don't want in a control deck. But in an aggressive deck or a mid-range deck, this card is fucking bonkers.
I mean, I think that we've talked a little bit about one-sided wraths already in the previous episode, and looking at like how strong that effect is, and regardless of how you swing this, like it's costing you 3 mana. So in a way, I sort of look at this similarly to Toxic Deluge, except it leaves your board all right, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is, I've seen a couple of people play this, but Toxic Deluge is certainly better known than Fire Covenant. But this card might just be better. I mean, Toxic Deluge is more of a control card than an aggressive card. But if you're playing this in an aggressive deck, you don't really care about your life total as much.
Yeah.
And getting to clear away the board is super relevant. Even if it's just a 3 mana, pay 3 Arc Lightning effect, like that's quite good.
Yeah, it's not a catch-all. So with Toxic Deluge, and also it's an instant, so just like they can't really be compared, but I'm using the comparison because they have similar end results. Yeah. But with Toxic Deluge, obviously you paying 2 life deals with all of their 2 toughness things. Whereas this, like, you're going to have to pay 4 for one, 2 for another, maybe 1 and another 1 or whatever, you know, to deal with their board state. But again, in the deck list you're describing, Ben, doesn't matter. Just pay it all. Rakdos, get them, you know, swing in.
I mean, we haven't even covered the rest, and this might be my shot for the best card that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, Fire Covenant, for sure.
Certainly one of the most underappreciated.
Yeah, and I'm going to be straight up honest. Like, I've heard of most of these cards, and there's obviously some ones that I asked to have been add in these, but Fire Covenant was not one that I was familiar with. Ironically, it's also in colors I play quite consistently, so yeah, I'm definitely going to be searching through the 25-cent bin for a copy of Fire Covenant.
So now moving into my neck of the woods, we have Fyndhorn Elder, 2 and a green for a 1/1 elf. Tap to add 2 green to your mana pool. This is a Christopher Rush classic. And before we get into the actual card itself, I gotta say, if you're going to play this card, always go with the Ice Age art. Because the new art just looks like a budget Elrond from Lord of the Rings. Looks like this old-ass dude just kind of sitting there smirking. Just, you gotta go old school, you know?
Yeah, totally. No shoutouts to the 7th edition one where the dude's like sucking the power out of the tree, though?
Yeah, we can give a shout out to 7th edition.
Which generally had terrible art, but I like that one.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. If people have time to go and look through the 7th edition art, I'd highly recommend so. You will probably laugh harder than you have ever laughed.
Yeah, some of it's really bad. So, how is this? Explain to me, like, is this one of those playables where you'd be playing Tree Speaker? Like, tell me more.
As some of you may be aware, I love playing mono green. There's a deck, Mono Green Cradle Hoof, which is essentially a hypermana strategy relying on an excessive amount of mana producers to ultimately Crater Hoof them out of the game, or Gaia's Cradle, Kessig Wolf run them, that kind of thing. And you always want to play your 1 mana dorks and a couple of the 2 mana ones. But these 3 mana ones, it's a little more complicated, because 3 mana for a 1/1, that is really scary. Your investment in this card, only to have it killed, it sucks.
Yeah, it's pretty deep.
But if your meta is comprised of a lot of control without red, or a lot of combo, or opposing green decks, or stacks decks, I really like these cards. This is the OG 3 mana tap for 2. There's plenty of other ones that have been printed. And those cards are really powerful when the meta's right, which is why we're including this guy. He is just an absolute house. He lets you get to 6 mana on turn 3, assuming you have a mana dork on turn 1, which 6 mana means prime time. Prime time means your opponent's dead, usually. There's not much to really go on this card because it's just a mana dork, but time and a place. Time and a place.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be playing this against metas where you're... Well, I mean, actually, just shout out to Fire Covenant. You do not play this guy against Fire Covenant.
Airhorn.
Do not play this guy if you've recently seen somebody buy a Fire Covenant, sleeve up the Fire Covenant, and then approached you before the tournament and said, "Hello, I am playing Fire Covenant.
Wanna jam?" Yeah. Yeah, but no, in a meta where you're not worried, not concerned about like crypt rats or something like that, or like, you know, like wraths and stuff.
I'm always worried about crypt rats. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I mean, we'll touch on that later. I like this guy though. That's a pretty strong effect for what you get. Obviously, the body's really small, but that's part of what we're talking about. This is like play him into a meta.
And to quote the card,
do we know what we're doing, Ben?
yes, we're killing you on turn 3 or 4. Up next, Garza's Assassin. Triple black for a 2/2 human assassin. Sacrifice the assassin, destroy target non-black creature. And then it has a keyword that I doubt half the people even remember this. It's called recover. So when another creature is put into your graveyard from play, you may pay whatever the recover cost is. And if you do, you return the card from your graveyard to your hand. Otherwise, it gets exiled. And the recover cost for this is half your life rounded up.
That's not a big deal.
If you're, I mean, in the decks that you're playing this card, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, I paid half my life on Thursday. I'll play it again on Monday. You know, not a big deal. Beautiful, beautiful, super elegant CMC on this guy. Just gorgeous.
You're saying that as a Dark Ritual aficionado.
Oh, Dark Ritual. 3 swamps.
No plays until turn 3, and then you slap down this bad boy.
Garza Assassin.
Yeah, I mean, the card is pretty straightforward in what it does. You're not going to be running into a lot of black creatures. I like the fact that this can hit artifact creatures as well. That's super important because typically cards from this era or cards that have shoutouts to older eras, they have the terror effect, right? They say...
Is this a flavor of Royal Assassin?
I believe it's a Royal Assassin kind of...
Yeah. Equal CMC, just one colorless on Royal, but yeah. This card is actually very popular in Germanlander. Germanlander's a little bit slower, I think, than our format, but I still think that this card has actual playability.
Yeah, and I would like to shoutouts to those guys. I like to call them Eurolander more than Germanlander now.
Oh, sweet! I didn't know it was in. Yeah, okay, cool, nice.
Oh, shit's big. Shit is big over there.
Yeah, Eurolander, real deal.
You know what's a real deal? Paying 0 mana to deal 4 to them. Guerrilla Tactics, ladies and gentlemen. 1 in a red.
Hey, leave the card alone, right?
1 in a red, instant. It's normally a shock. So that sucks. I hate paying 1 red to deal 2 damage. But, if a spell or effect controlled by an opponent would cause you to discard Guerrilla Tactics, you can have it deal 4 damage to target creature or player. It's got that Obstinate Baloth. I mean, I think this is the original Obstinate Baloth kind of, I've got you, idiot.
Could very well be, yeah. Really good against the Lilianas. Holy smokes.
Which, there is quite a lot of Liliana, there's quite a lot of Mind Twist.
Yep.
So this card, I really like. In those metas. Usually, red... I wouldn't play this in the creature-based red decks, but in the more burn-oriented, where your creature curve is really just 2-power 1-drops and ball lightning effects, in those kind of decks, if you know that you're going to run into a lot of black, I would slide this guy on in, because 4 damage is great, obviously.
Yeah, for 0 mana, for sure.
Icequake. 1, double black, sorcery, destroy target land. If that land is a snow-covered land, Icequake deals 1 damage to that land's controller. So this is what we were talking about, when sometimes you have to pay the cost to be the boss.
Get down!
If you have a snow land, you take 1 damage. I'm sorry, Adam and I may have kind of coaxed you into playing these snow lands, and now you're getting fucked over by Icequake.
We reap what we sow, you know?
There's not really much to touch on this card, aside from it's a black land destruction spell that a lot of people tend to forget.
Yeah.
Or at least the name escapes them.
I think we're probably going to touch upon a lot of black 3-cost land destruction spells as we go sort of up through these series, because they don't see much play in Highlander, and there is a deck for those for sure. The other thing too is, I'm sorry, I gotta do a shout out to Richard Kane Ferguson. Richard Kane Ferguson is my favorite Magic artist, hands down. That art looks so good. Oh my god. Love that guy.
RKF has just, like, Wizards, please. I know the guy is, I think he's retired and kind of just doing what he wants to do, but I would love to see some RKF come back. His art style isn't what they're, air quotes, going for in modern Magic.
It's not their demo, but yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to see another Nebuchadnezzar or another Dakon Blackblade.
Totally.
You know, that kind of stuff.
Great artist.
Into the North. This is a card that I'm sure all of you know by now, but I really want to drive home how good this card is. It's just 1 and a green for a sorcery. You find a snow land, put it into play tapped, shuffle your library. So, in a lot of decks, if you're looking for a Rampant Growth, this is just another Rampant Growth to play, right?
However,
but it can find Dark Depths, and Dark Depths is a very powerful Magic card. In fact, it's probably one of the best win cons in Highlander. It's really risky at times, but you can just fuck people over so easily with Dark Depths.
Yeah, and it definitely goes, I mean, Dark Depths specifically goes in a lot of deck lists that already are running threats. So generally, like, Into the North is either going to be searching for an actual mana in this list, or searching for a reasonable win con, or searching for, like, Moth of Ronom or something like that, you know, which is super, has a lot of use as well. So no, Into the North is a sweet card. Plus, it's another incentive to run the best lands in Magic. So. And
as you said, there are other snow lands than just the basics and Dark Depths. Mouth of Ronom, something that we'll touch on. I love that card, and I imagine if you're playing, I mean, not necessarily, but playing these kind of cards and Mouth of Ronom with Crucible Worlds is a super underrated engine for just dealing with things without any real interaction. But we'll get to that when we touch on the Mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Jeweled Amulet. 0 mana. It's an artifact. You pay 1, tap it, and you put a charge counter on the amulet. And this is where it gets real cool. So you have to note what kind of mana was used when you're putting the charge counter on it. And then you can tap it to remove a counter from the amulet to add 1 mana of the type that you put into it to your mana pool. You can only have 1 counter on the amulet, but still, it's It's a 0 mana artifact that generates mana.
Yeah, I mean the other thing. This is gonna sound. You know, it says note the type of mana, but it hasn't actually told you how to note that mana. So I mean, you can put a little charge counter thing on it, or you can put a dice on it, or you can do some like flavorful dance in front of your opponent that shows them which type of mana is going into this jeweled amulet. You know, like this leaves a lot of. Again, this is some excellent design space for sure.
You just tap it with some blue mana. Your opponent looks at you, says, "Sorry, what did you add?" And then you just, jump out of your seat, scream "Blue, motherfucker, blue!" Slam your hands on the table, flip the table.
Yeah, spin around, do like a pirouette and stuff.
Gotta get crazy. It's a 0 mana artifact that adds mana. You gotta be excited.
This card sees a ton of play in Highlander, but we're mentioning anyway because for some reason a lot of new players don't realize that this should be in their deck. This is one of those cards, too, that is really, really undervalued in so many formats. Like, for example, when you're talking about, like, mana rocks in other formats like Commander and stuff like that, people always assume the Jeweled Amulet is, like, this garbage card, which it's not. It's strong. Like, it's a crazy strong, and also generates, like, mana in Storm List, as well as just going in any list that wants to play out Big Dumb Idiots. Also playable in stacks and tax variants, like this card goes in a lot of decks.
This is more just a kind of let's bring it up to get more people aware of this card. Super easy to acquire. Feel free to go to your local Yellow Jacket Comics and Toys and pick up a copy of this. Up next, we have Jotun Grunt, a.k.a. where the fuck is this guy when I'm trying to put him into a cockatrice list? Because I can't type, the umlauts?
Umlauts.
Yeah. Can't type that. 2 mana 4/4, Giant Soldier, has a cumulative upkeep of put 2 cards in a single graveyard on the bottom of their owner's library. Now this card has seen play in other formats, Vintage, Legacy, Old Extended, and I think it can carry over into Highlander. You don't want it in every single list that you put together for like a white weenie list or an aggressive red-white list, but 4 power for 2 mana with a cumulative upkeep that, nowadays is super relevant when people are trying to stack their graveyards for treasure cruises and dig through times.
Yeah, or flashbacks, or they're trying to put their animator targets in there, like Jotun Grunt, man.
It's one of those cards where the cost that is supposed to be a downside can end up just being this huge upside. Like, he turns from this big dumb idiot where you have to have a little extra in order to play him to this big dumb idiot that, he's also a hate bear. But
yeah,
he's not a bear. He's 2 bears.
The thing about this card, there's a couple things about this card. I don't think the deck that plays this guy can afford to keep him around. So this is an effect that is almost always targeting your opponent or has to consider to target your opponent. The other thing as well, though, is I don't think you can expect to get in more than 4 damage with Jotun Grunt. Because putting 2 cards for the first upkeep cost after you've played them, super fine, it's going to happen. The 4 after that is like, now we're talking about a whole 6 total cards that you've removed from your opponent's graveyard. That's looking a little bit harder to pull off, but still being able to get in 4, potentially 8 damage with this guy for 2 CMC is insanely strong.
To me, this card seems very similar to something like Sarah Avenger, where it's only 2 mana, but you're never really casting it on turn 2.
This
is more of a guy where later on in the game, if you've cast an Armageddon, or you just want to keep your mana, your curve low, you can plop this guy out and not feel like, oh, here's a 2/2 for 2 on turn 8.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so you're going to play him later on in the game, and this is probably going to go in White Weenie. But yeah, I still think that, there is going to be times where you just need another threat, and he might not survive 2 he might not just have 2 or 3 turns, but maybe it's just worth having that 4 damage in as well. So
yeah, don't expect this guy to be able to stick around forever, but
yeah,
he will be around enough to cause some problems.
He'll matter, yeah.
Lat-Nam's Legacy. 1 in a blue, it's an instant. You put a card from your hand and shuffle that into your library. Now, if that was just all this card did, this card would be garbage. But at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, you get to draw 2 cards. And that's quite good. So the kind of decks where you'd want to see this, I mean, I'd like this card in stuff like Flash Hulk, or maybe not, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this card in Storm variants, like a Storm deck or a High Tide deck, but in something where you have to have a specific card in your library, and for whatever reason you always get it into your hand even though there's 93 other cards in your fucking deck.
Yeah, I think this card, not exclusively, I think this card really wants to be in a deck like Doomsday, which is going to be a deck list where if you draw some of your combo pieces, it puts you in... Because the thing about Doomsday, and I was talking to Jeremy about this a couple days ago, it's a hard list to play, but it becomes even harder because you have to create all these different package scenarios, right? Where Lat-Nam Legacy enables you to open up those possibilities and put yourself in a position where you can be drawing the proper packages without having those elements and combo pieces in your hand, you know, because you want them on top of your library in that scenario. So
yeah, no, definitely. Good card, somewhat narrow in application, but you'll know when you want this card or when you even need this card.
Totally.
Lim-Dul's Vault. This card is an odd inclusion to have on this list because it's a pointed card, so you'd expect a lot of people to know it's around. And they do. They know this card exists, probably because they've been killed by it. But I think our inclusion of this card on the list is more directed towards how willing people are to dedicate points to this card. Because this card is really powerful.
Yeah, it's a 2-cost tutor.
There's not much else to say beyond that. Obviously, you might run into some occasions where it's the bottom card of the deck and you get goozled. But when you don't, which is probably going to happen more than the scenario I just entailed, it's a 2-mana tutor at instant speed, which is very necessary because the card itself doesn't draw you a card, so you have to kind of set up. But that's great. I mean, being able to ship the turn and then EOT this, and then they have to make a decision, you know?
Yeah.
Do I go for the Lim-Dul's Vault, or do I wait for him to vault and then try and deal with what they're vaulting?
And you can order those cards however you like. The final like 5 that you've decided to keep or whatever, you can order those however you like. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
Every other card that you put on the bottom has to get shuffled, but the top 5 that you select, it's in any order.
Yeah. Okay, so not only do you get the card you tutor for, but you also get to order them as you see fit.
Yeah, so say there's a card beyond those 5 that you saw and you're like, oh, I really want to draw this, but it's not what I need right now.
Yeah.
You know it's not going to be just sitting at the bottom of your deck. Magus of the Unseen. 1 in a blue for a 1/1 wizard. Adam, I'm going to need you to bring up the Oracle text on this little lady.
All right.
Because I've played this card before not in Highlander, in Classic on
what?
Magic Online.
Okay, sorry. I'm gonna come out and say it. I was not familiar with this card before we started this video. Okay, folks. 1 colorless, 1 blue, 1/1 human wizard. Nice tribes. 2. So 1 colorless, 1 blue tap symbol. Untap target artifact an opponent controls and gain control of it until end of turn. It gains haste until end of turn. When you lose control of it, the artifact tap it. Oh my god, this is insane.
Yeah, it's just it's a really cheap creature, so that kind of makes up for it being so vulnerable. But you're not really attacking with this. You're probably stealing their important artifacts, be it a big dumb creature or...
Oh my god, I need to run this with liquid metal coating.
Now we're brewing.
Oh, this card's awesome.
It's also just a sick safety net against getting tinkered out.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. Stealing their Time Vault is really cool.
Oh my god, yeah.
This gal, I miss playing with this card.
This card is super gotcha tier. Like, so gotcha tier. This is probably our first gotcha tier card of this series.
We did just cover a card, though, that had the word gotcha printed on it.
This is true, but this is the gotcha-er one.
This is even more gotcha.
Yeah. No, this card's sweet. So, obviously having, controlling an artifact, I mean, that could be awesome. That could just be you stealing, like, equipment or whatever, right? Could be you stealing my Juggernauts. Don't do that, please. Don't sideboard this in. But, yeah, it can also mean getting whatever they tinkered for. It can be getting a slew of very common combo pieces, Yeah, and like I said before, like this also can go in a deck list that just like turns their permanents into artifacts, you know? So there's a lot of like really neat, very brewable versatility for a card like this. I'm glad you pointed this out and put it on the list. I'm stoked about this card. Great art too, Aja.
Oh yeah, shoutouts to Kaja Foglio. She's certainly better than her husband. But 2 mana and tapping it, occasionally you can actually net mana by stealing like a Gilded Lotus or a Worn Power Stone, Grim Monolith kind of effect.
Oh yeah.
In addition, it's in the right color, obviously, for playing stuff like your own Tinkers. So taking their thing and then being able to tinker off of it. Or just taking their thing and mucking around with it in any way, shape, or form. Love this card. This card.
Yeah, me too.
Mouth of Ronom. And we talked about this before. It's a snow land. It only adds a colorless. But it has 4 and a snow mana. Tap, sacrifice the Mouth of Ronom. It deals 4 damage to target creature. It's uncounterable removal. It's expensive. But it's also a great combo piece, air quotes combo, with Crucible of Worlds. Because getting repeatable, uncounterable removal that usually it's going to kill it because it's 4 damage, that gets around protection. Like this card is super relevant against Mother of Runes decks and whatnot. It's super good at dealing with creatures that have swords on them.
Oh yeah.
And even if you don't have Crucible, you know, you get them in the bin, you get to life from the Lomet back. This is a card that I think really needs more attention.
Yeah, I think you've been singing the praises of Mouth of Ronom for a long time. I've not seen this card once in Highlander, even in utility lists. Utility land lists, which I think this fits very smoothly into. Also goes into lists that don't care too much about colored mana, like you would probably be running this in a stacks or tax variant, where dealing 4 damage to a target creature is a big deal. They can't counter it. You're going to bring it back. You're going to reuse that utility. This card is very strong. You're getting it with Into the North, the card we just were talking about earlier. Yeah, I like this card quite a bit.
Yeah, we already touched on it a bit with Into the North.
And taps when it comes into play.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty big upside for utility lands like this. Nowadays, if they have this kind of effect, well, usually they don't have this kind of effect, but there are a lot of utility lands that do come into play tapped, or they have, I mean, the drawback on this is you have to pay snow mana, but we've covered that. That's not a drawback. That's just, you need to get your shit in gear.
Boom shakalaka!
This card's all upside almost, I think.
Mudslide. Another card that I'm going to have to get Adam to read the text on. I'm pretty sure I know exactly what this does.
This card was a reader. So it's an enchantment. It's 1 red mana, 2 colorless. So it says the following. Creatures without flying don't untap during their controller's untap steps. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player may choose any number of tapped creatures without flying he or she controls, and pay 2 for each creature chosen this way. If the player does, untap those creatures.
So it has this kind of Dream Tides effect where creatures don't untap. That's good. And then they have the option to pay 2 to untap some of their creatures. But the decks that you're playing this in are going to be restricting them on mana. They're going to be lockdown decks, stacks decks.
Yep.
It's just another stack piece that is conveniently castable off Ancient Tomb and a colored source.
Enchantments at 3 are very strong in those decks, and this is going to go like right alongside Ghostly Prison or Propaganda, where it's costing them 4 mana for each creature just to get in an attack. Like, that's ridiculous.
Talk about that makes me want to focus on a spicy little enduring ideal red, white, blue enchantment list. Like, not an Enchantress Engine one, just a big fuck you Enchantress list.
Oh yeah, run Smoke as well. We were talking about Smoke previously in our first series. That's like another one of those cards that fits into that, like, especially if there's a very creature dominant meta, like, oh, get him.
Orcish Lumberjack, 1 red for a 1/1. It's an orc. Tap to sacrifice a forest to add 3 mana to any combination of red or green in your mana pool. Shut up! Orcish Lumberjack, 1 red for a 1/1. It's an orc. Tap to sacrifice a forest to add 3 mana in any combination of red or green to your mana pool. I've played this card in Vintage. Mind you, it wasn't in the best deck, but I've also played this card in Classic from Magic Online as well. And this kind of has that Magus of the Unseen factor where people know about it a bit that have been in that community or have looked at that format. And this card saw play back in the day. But look at that fucking card. Like, you play him on turn 1, next turn you have 5 mana. You get to turn all of your lands into Black Lotuses, or your forests rather. Albeit you can only add red or green, but if it's a red card asking you to sacrifice a forest, you're probably adding red or green.
I think that we've talked about this a little bit. I really, really think there's this, like, red-green ramp list that just wants to run out Rurik Thar as soon as possible, and, like, this card goes in that deck list in spades.
The red-green, get down big dumb idiot, maybe muck around with their mana or what they can do as quick as possible.
No, that's so funky in that list. Like,
obviously, sacrificing a land is a bit of a big cost.
Whatever, man!
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. If you're playing these kind of cards, you gotta assume that... I mean, you gotta acknowledge that you might get goozled sometimes.
Yeah, you're trying to get them. You're not trying to play, like, safe, like, down-home country cooking Magic, you know? Like, yeah, no, this card's insane. Play this card.
Please. Somebody
play this card.
Somebody play this card. Phyrexian Ironfoot. 3 colorless for a 3/4 snow artifact creature. Ironfoot doesn't untap during your untap step. Pay 1 and any snow mana, untap Ironfoot. Obviously, you play this card off of Mishra's Workshop. Bada bing, bada boom.
In terms of my experience with this card, I'm running a deck list like we had sort of talked about. I've been playing this deck for about a month and a half now. 5 power, turn 2. Phyrexian Ironfoot is a very strong card. I think it goes in the aggressive version of like Artifact Aggro and not in like the more BattleBots one. I think it goes in a list that wants to run 1, 2, or 3 drops. Can afford to untap this guy. And like you said, playable off Mishra's Workshop. This card is strong. It's just much faster than the deck that I was trying to play it in initially. I still think this card's insane. It goes in aggro. It doesn't go in 5-drop.
When Adam came to me with his BattleBots list, I immediately tipped my table out of arousal and jumped on creating a version of that my own. Now, my way of looking at that list, which I imagine this is going to be like the first deck that we talk about in Brouhaha, because this is so near and dear to our hearts. My version of this deck was more looking to get as much power on the table as quickly as possible and willing to kind of say, I'm not always going to get 5, I want 3s. And some of it might not be as good. Like, we don't know. I haven't put this deck into practice. Adam has had his build, Garrett has had his build, and they've been very successful with those builds. And this was kind of my take on it. Because the 3 mana is so key, in my opinion, for workshop decks. Being able to abuse this card that is, frankly, one of the most powerful lands in the game. And getting this guy out ASAP is huge. It doesn't die to a lot of removal, aside from the, artifact removal that you'll end up seeing. But it doesn't die to Bolt, which is pretty big. And even if you might not be able to untap him the next turn, he fits the bill on what you're kind of looking for that kind of deck, right?
I personally view this as like turn 1, Phyrexian Ironfoot, pass. Turn 2, Cold Steel Heart, Snowland, pass. Or like swing and pass. And then turn 3, untap this guy, slam down another 3-drop. Like, you're cooking, Yeah.
I've also seen this guy in decks outside of BattleBots, decks outside of Artifact Aggression. I've seen him in mono blue lists where they are looking to just have a big body that can defend them while simultaneously being able to kill off opposing planeswalkers or hold the fort, right? Like, that ass is fat.
That ass is fat.
My anaconda don't want none unless you got buns, hun.
He can hold off a lot of different things. He can swing in without having to risk losing something, and even if he does knock off something they have, well, in blue, that's something you don't get every single day. And being able to attack for 3, untap it at instant speed, deterring them from attacking, or just holding up mana where you're in mono blue and they're thinking, okay, they have mana up, I could be walking into a counterspell, an untapping Ironfoot, or a Factor Fiction, that kind of thing. This guy's a lot more diverse than I think he lets on, or that even we let on. You know, maybe he has a place in other builds than what we've talked about.
Quick shout out on the art too. I think that's one of my favorite artifact creature arts in Magic.
It is so good. I like that kind of. They've touched on this, and there's going to be a bit of a similar art in the next card that we talk about.
Oh yeah, I'm so excited for this.
But I really like the detail that goes into it. The kind of, it's obviously seen better days, which kind of fits with the whole it doesn't untap. This guy, you don't want to meet this guy in an alley. Phyrexian Snow Crusher. Adam, this one's on you. This one is, I would feel like a real sack of shit if I took the thunder away from talking about this card.
I love Phyrexian Snow Crusher. This card is so sweet. It is a 6 CMC, all the right color, as in the lack of color. Snow artifact creature. It's a Juggernaut. Great tribe. Such a great tribe. And it says it has to attack each turn of Fable. Standard Juggernaut tech. 1 colorless, 1 snow mana. It gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And it's a 6/5. Yeah, this card's just ridiculous. And just, oh my god, this... So I've said on multiple times, like, just how I feel, how well Juggernauts are designed. In terms of playability, I think this card's insane in that, in a deck list that wants to put out 5 to 6 power, turn 2 or 3 or whatever, like, this card's just ridiculous in this list. It's just so well designed. The design space is excellent in this card. And the art... Oh, the art is so good.
That art is incredible. The plow with, like, the screaming face.
Yeah, I just, like, hear, like, every time I see this card, I just, like, picture, like, Iron Maiden's, like, run to the hills! In the background and stuff, and there's literally hills in the background.
Literally hills. There's probably people running. They're not shown on this, but if you see this, I'd start fucking running.
Yeah, and when you slam this guy sideways, you gotta go like, like, it has some serious... that's just a prerequisite if you're playing...
To touch on the more technical side of the card, getting away from the Iron Maiden impressions, I feel like this card gets ignored. Because at 6 mana artifact, if you ask somebody what's a 6 mana artifact creature, you're probably going to hear either Wormcoil Engine or Triskelion or Duplicant, Steel Hellkite, that kind of thing. But in a deck, and then they're going to say, well, I don't think there's anything else. But this guy is huge. This guy cracks in for so much damn damage. And being able to plus give it, like, you're not going to be able to take advantage of it all the time, but the fact that it also just has fire breathing attached to it, I mean, that's great.
No, this is a new one, dude. It's not even metal breathing. This is just snow breathing.
By the end, I'm going to use this medium as an opportunity to put a bet towards you, Adam, or not necessarily a bet, but a challenge. I want to see you, or anybody else actually, let's put this out there, if anybody plays a deck with 3 or more Juggernauts in them, and wins a game where they cast Coat of Arms, or not Coat of Arms, where they cast like an Obelisk of Erd, or even have Coat of Arms or something, and it's all about the Juggernauts, I will personally send you $5.
Challenge accepted.
Oh, Jesus, what have
Highlander
I done?
Highlander community, accept that challenge.
On to another Phyrexian card that's a 3 mana 3/4. We have Phyrexian War Beast. 3 colorless, 3/4, artifact creature. When he leaves play, sack a land, he deals 1 damage to you. So this guy, the stats, admittedly not that impressive as far as power levels go, but this is the kind of guy where I think Adam and I are split on the inclusion of him in like a BattleBots list. Because to me, I will take this. Like, I will take the 3 power on turn 1 with a big ass. Sure, there are Vapor Snags and Swords to Plowshares effects running around that'll probably fuck me over. But I'm here to stop that. I'm here to play this guy and then drop a Tangle Wire. Or, drop out a Thorn of Amethyst, a Spear of Resistance.
Yeah, so Phyrexian War Beast, I think, is actually might have some elements that make it stronger than Ironfoot. It's obviously different, and they can't necessarily be exactly compared other than the fact that they're both artifacts and they have the same power and toughness. But I really do like this card. Again, I think it goes in a lower tier list, like a one that wants to run like lower CMC. But the downside to this card isn't really that big of a downside. Like, yeah, you might get goozled because they have a Vapor Snag, like you said. But this could just be first turn 3/4, you know, off of your Miniatures Workshop or like Island Mana Crypt or whatever, right? And yeah, it just is a lot more upside than it is downside, provided this card comes out earlier, you know?
It's worth mentioning also that while these decks are looking to generate a lot of mana very quickly, they do not like getting past a certain point. So you want to, it's the problem of you're looking to hit 3-4 mana on turn 1 or 2, but you don't really want to get to 6, 7, 8. I mean, sometimes you do, don't get me wrong, but for certain draws, you're kind of just like, okay, I don't want any more lands. And if you get that, I mean, that's sacking the land then, not a big deal. These decks that are playing these cards are playing Crucible Worlds as well, so hey, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world.
I really like War Beast. I think that's super playable in maybe like the list that you were discussing, you know? Slides along Ironfoot really nicely. This card is very succinct and very well designed.
Squall Drifter. The card, I have not had a harder time finding any card in Magic than Squall Drifter, which seems really stupid, and I acknowledge that. But when I was trying to find a copy of this card locally, it just wasn't happening. It's a 2-mana 1/1 snow creature that has flying, that you pay 1 and you tap a creature. So it's not that exciting, but I'm including it because it's seen some play in the European scene. And once I managed to find a copy, I played it in the Evasive White Weenie lists, either the Suntail Hawk lists or the Meekstone ones that are looking to not go over 2 power, but instead kill them through evasion and playing the tappers, right? The gold metal hair.
Yeah, whip quarters and stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Is whip quarter deck real? Like, can it be real? Like, I don't know. Like, I think Squall Drifter is like top tier in that list just because it has evasion.
Yeah, again, the card isn't strong, but in the list where you're looking to have a certain effect and as many of it as possible, this guy is great.
I'm going to stop you there because we keep on saying that some of these cards aren't strong. I think consistency is strong.
It's a different breed of consistency, too, because it's not the Ponder, Kitchen Finks, value.deck consistency. It's the, I want this effect.
No.
To get that effect, I'm going to have to play a lot of copies of these kind of cards.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we're not, this isn't a snooze fest card. This is like a very kind of specific, highly tuned sort of list, you know. And I think this card is really cool. I'd like to sort of see if there's any reality to a list that just wants to tap down all their opponent's creatures, you know?
Tap down their everything.
Yeah, tap down their all, yeah.
And it's an ability that a lot of people don't really accept how strong that this can be. Like, this can make or break certain matchups, right? Just like tapping down whatever they have, be it a big dumb idiot that they have, or tapping down like even a medium-sized idiot when you have lock pieces in play. And there are a bunch of these that are quite good. I can think of at least 6 of these cards that are playable, and very much so. We'll touch on those later, but I think we've already mentioned some of them. So this is a double whammy here. We have Stromgald Crusader and White Shield Crusader. These are the Pump Knights from Coldsnap. They are mirrors of themselves, and they're getting lumped in here because they're really hard to find, and I think people forget that they exist.
I think these are the kind of cards that I'd like to consider very early when I would be building a maybe like a black aggro or like Sui aggro list. Just because in this case they have protection, they're also can be given evasion, and their power ratio is like high enough that, you know, I would consider them. I'd be curious if someone like Nelson had been putting these cards in his, Sui aggro list that he's quite well known for, you know?
I imagine you'd have a hard time casting White Shield in Sui Black, though.
Oh, I mean, I'm referring to, yeah.
There's going to be a sad trombone clip added after that.
For the Crusader, for sure.
Both of these cards, obviously, they have protection from popular removal spell colors, white and black. I mean, Lightning Bolt is still going to get them, but hey, that shouldn't stop you from playing these kind of cards. Mm-hmm. They can give themselves evasion, which is great, and they have mana sinks for pumping in more damage.
Yep.
Simple, bread and butter cards, just kind of bringing them to the front. Mm-hmm. Thrumming Stone. We're going to be pretty quick on this card, because there is literally only one archetype where I would recommend playing Thrumming Stone, and that's just Relentless Rats deck. We've seen it being played before. There's not much to that. I just wanted to, tell people that they can play their 50-odd rats if they want to.
Ben, let's talk about whether or not Thrumming Stone should be ran in a deck like that versus another rat. Because I think that this is a really important thing to talk about when we're talking about the Relentless Rats deck. Is, can Relentless Rats afford to run Thrumming Stone?
It's a little slow for sure, but I think this card would be taking a non-rat slot before it takes a rat, right? You would have your X amount of Relentless Rats, stuff like maybe Pack Rat, Marrow-Gnar, whatever else you want to include, Dark Confidant. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of say, all right, what do I want to play to assist me killing them with these 5th Dawn uncommons? I think I would rather play Thrumming Stone over something like another Doomblade or a Sign in Blood effect or whatnot, because if it's expensive, but if you get it going and they don't have a Wrath, don't you just win the game?
Yeah, I mean, it does turn your Relentless Rats deck, which is a deck that's based on like a very simple synergy, into literally a combo deck.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that might have some, maybe it's a little bit more risky, but maybe that risk is like the reason why you play Thrumming Stone. Like, it sounds like it could be potentially turning that deck into something that's really interesting, Not that Relentless Rats isn't interesting. I think that deck's sweet, but, this is kind of really cool.
Undergrowth. 1 green, it's a fog. That's it. I mean, it has the kicker cost of you can pay 2 and a red in addition to the casting cost. If you do, Undergrowth does not affect red creatures. Now,
you are literally never doing that.
And if you are, please slap yourself in the face. Fogs only really belong in one deck, and that would be Turbo Fog. And maybe even that deck doesn't belong. Maybe that deck shouldn't even be played that much. But this is a card that it's what you need, right? It's a 1-mana Fog. It's not as good as the Festival effects, but it's one that I actually forgot existed.
Yeah, I totally didn't know this card existed. I mean, Alliances has Fogs, also that ridiculous alternative cost thing that has going on.
Also that ridiculous art. Like, that guy is just he's just sitting there kind of like,
where's the rest of my squad?
Yo, where'd my crew go? And the flavor text, it is the work of sorcery, burn it.
Yeah. I don't think there's much we need to say more about this. It goes in Turbo Fog.
Vexing Sphinx. Adam,
let's get it on.
Vex gon' give it to ya. Fuck waiting for you to discard on your own, because Vex gon' deliver to ya. Knock knock. Shout out to DMX. Knock knock, open up the door. Yeah. Who's there? It's a 4/4 non-stop. I'm done. This is a card I learned about in 2007 or so from the European scene, from a Blue-White Skies list. And it's a 3-mana 4/4 flying. Fine. Good. Great even. And then it has cumulative upkeep, discard a card. Well, that fucking sucks. But the first time you do it, okay, it's just a Masticore effect, like, whatever. The second time you do it, okay, stop.
Whatever.
But by then, you've probably gotten in for 4, gotten in for 8 maybe, or traded off their creatures, so you're fine with that. But its other ability, when the Sphinx dies, you draw a card for each age counter on it. Like, that helps you restock. And when you're in a list that wants to play this guy, so something like Sea Stompy, or even like a Skies deck, that's pretty damn good, because it's giving you some kind of card draw which those lists don't run or don't want to dedicate too many cards to running.
Yeah, the only thing I do really like this card, it's super fast, beat 'em up tier. Like you said, goes in Sea Stompy. The only thing I don't like about this card is the fact that you can't cast it off Ancient Tier.
Yeah, it's just...
That's really the biggest drawback to this card. Otherwise, it's quite elegant.
This is also a card that I haven't seen any real play, but filling up your graveyard has become a lot more relevant since concepts are here too, right? Since the printing of Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise. And I'm not saying throw this into value lists or tempo lists, but it's a powerful effect, and sometimes you can actually take advantage of pitching away your useless cards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This goes in aggressive lists. This goes in lists that where the value evasion really highly. Let's just hope this thing hits the graveyard. I think that's really the major theme for that.
You don't want to get burned by some kind of unsummon, which is a great segue into I fucked up.
I'm done. I'm done. No, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm
let
done.
him go,
I'm
kid.
leaving. I'm
Fucking
leaving. I'm
amateur
gone.
doesn't
I'm done.
want to cast
I'm
the
out of
kitchen
here.
Sphinx or
Goodbye.
any of the good spells. You know, back in my day, we...
Withering Wisps, ladies and gentlemen. 1 double black. It's an enchantment. At the end of any turn, if there are no creatures in play, Kaputskis. And then pay a black. Withering Wisps deals 1 damage to each creature and each player. You cannot spend more black mana in this way each turn than the number of snow-covered swamps you control. Adam, do you know any cards similar to this?
Yeah, so this is basically better Pestilence. I think this is such a strong card. I built a deck that was featured on Liam's sort of like series that was running Pestilence effects. I was running basically like mono black Pestilence. This card's just ridiculous. Pestilence is something of effect that doesn't really see enough love in Highlander, probably because it is it's obviously a reciprocal effect, but I think Withering Wisps is the best Pestilence, and the drawback shouldn't be a drawback because you should be just running all snow-covered swamps anyway. No, that's it. I just think this card's really strong and should see more play.
I'd like to see this and other cards featured in a kind of a combo list too, or like a combo attrition list using stuff like Wall of Hope or Stuffy Doll. That's maybe a little out there for a Highlander.
Oh, that's brewy. Yeah. Yeah, I like it though. I like the line.
That's a solid line to go off of. Now, on to my actual segue. This time, no fucking up.
God fucking damn it!
Word of Undoing. This is the unsummon I was looking for. In fact, this is better than unsummon. This is just straight up better than unsummon. 1 blue, instant, return target creature to its owner's hand, and then return any white enchantments you own on that creature to your hand. I sincerely doubt this will ever come into effect, because the decks that are running unsummons are usually not running white enchantments. And if you're using an unsummon, ideally you're using it on their creature. So...
yeah, and I think that if you've spent time like casting Pacifism or something like that, your Word of Undoing isn't really... the secondary effect on this is never going to matter. This is just 1 mana, return target creature to their hand, right?
It's just another unsummon that has gone under the radar that in a very, 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 very niche scenario, it can have an upside. But ultimately, it's just an unsummon. Yavimaya Ants. 2 and double green for a 5/1, trample, haste, cumulative upkeep, double green.
What?
I've killed a lot of people with this. Well, no, that's a stretch. I've killed people with this.
3 of them.
Sit on that for a moment.
Yeah.
But the real shout out should go to Mike Harrison, who he doesn't play Highlander as much anymore, but when the scene really started to pick up, that guy was killing people left and right with Yavimaya Ants. This card is near and dear to a lot of players in the Highlander community. And to new players that aren't familiar with this, it may look really bad. And don't get me wrong, it's not that good. But it hits like a fucking truck.
Yeah, so this is, in essence, a less color-restrictive Groundbreaker. So you do get one, it costs one more than Groundbreaker, but also costs one less green. So you can potentially run it in a list that wants to run other colors. You lose a toughness, or so you lose a power from it, but yeah, you probably run both because they're just all in, balls in, you know? This card's sick.
If you're on Groundbreaker, if you have the fucking audacity to sit across from me, if you got the stones to sit across from me, cast your Groundbreaker, cast your Yavimaya Ants, you know you got my respect, kid. You got my respect.
Actually, let's just even throw this out there. I will wholeheartedly, and I mean this to the deepest, like the center, the core of my being, if you cast Groundbreaker and Yavimaya Ants against me, I will scoop to you. Period. I will scoop to you.
Well, that's a little unfair because if they've cast both those, you're probably dead, Adam.
Yeah, you're right. I'm probably already dead. But just throwing it out there, I'm scooping to this.
That's pretty rough, man. Like, what if you have Ensnaring Bridge in play?
I don't know. I've already thrown it out there. It's set in stone.
It's on the internet now. It can't be deleted.
If you're running Yavimaya Ants and Groundbreaker, and if you're swinging with those guys, I'm scooping.
And he'll give you $100.
No, I can't do that one.
Jokes.
Cut the tape.
Joke's on you, idiot. I can edit out anything you say. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that.
My name's Adam Price, and if you cast both Groundbreaker and Yavimaya Ants against me...
Hey, man, are you done recording?
Oh, fucking hell.
Zer's Weirding, the last card on our list. Adam, Oracle text, please.
Oh, yeah, no problem. No problem, Ben. Let me just throw that together here. I love that you saved this for last. Not even, I mean, obviously it was intentional because they're alphabetical, but damn.
No, this is, you know what? Throw the alphabet out the window. This was intentional.
Okay, so it's 3 colorless. It's 1 blue. It's an enchantment. It says players play with their hands revealed. Oh, great. So that's awesome. If a player would draw a card, he or she reveals it instead. Then any other player may pay 2 life. If a player does, put that card into its owner's graveyard. Otherwise, that player draws a card. Yeah, so it gives your opponent the opportunity to pay 2 life to make sure that you never draw cards at Magic ever again.
But it also gives you the opportunity to make so that your opponent can never draw cards again.
I love it.
I really like this card. I like this card along another Ice Age classic. Maybe you've heard of the Orb belonging to Zur. It's called Zuran Orb, which coincidentally, if you sacrifice a land, you gain 2 life. So if you play this card with a Crucible of Worlds and a Zur's Weirding, oh boy, beautiful.
That's bad news for your opponent. And it is, just to be clear, it's not like the first card they've drawn this turn, just whenever, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh no, that's really neat. So this card is insanely specific and requires you to basically build a deck around that whole concept of your opponent not drawing cards. So super specific, but Spice Town, man, like this thing is.
This card definitely goes into the blue, white, red, enduring ideal mudslide fuck you deck that we talked about before.
Yeah, somebody build that. That sounds sweet.
We might just have to do it ourselves,
also,
Adam.
Yeah, we're gonna do it ourselves. Also, the old school art on this, like Zur's upskirt, is so fucking awesome.
You know what? That's a card we forgot to include. Zur's upskirt. That's one that doesn't really see much Highlander play.
See a lot of play.
The man is just like there, kind of like spread eagle, and Liz Danforth has, you know, classied it up a little bit.
She's knocked it out of the park with this one.
Oh, this is a good one. This is a great one.
This guy wouldn't be allowed in a park.
Yeah, I wouldn't allow this guy near anything. Maybe an orb, but that's it. And he's surrounded by orbs right now. This guy is fucking tripping balls.
Yeah, so honestly, looking at this card though, this doesn't go in any other list. Like this like it doesn't fit into anything really. It's just one of those cards that requires you to sort of. There's a lot of design space that's around it that you sort of want to put a deck together that's very specific for this. So I don't know. It's just like super specific. It's also just super cool and sees zero playing Highlander.
I think there's more synergies surrounding it than we're letting on. They might not be the best, and they might be a little expensive, but it's a really interesting lock piece that people have gone into it a bit, but not in recent memory, which, I mean, this card, I remember opening this card in, not Ice Age, but I remember opening this card when it was reprinted, and after my hiatus of Magic coming back in 8th edition, and just reading it and going, what the hell is this? This doesn't attack. This card fucking sucks. And now here I am, older, wiser, more bitter than ever.
Yeah.
And
weirder.
Weirder.
Right?
Yeah. I guess that's the best way to describe it. I'm a little weirder now than I was when I was younger. And
yeah.
God, I love it.
Why did they print this in core sets?
Well, Adam, they wanted to show new players that Magic isn't all about players having fun. Sometimes it's about preventing players to have fun. It's setting them on the right track is what they printed this for.
Totally, and that's like why we're doing this series too. It's to promote unfun Magic.
And you know why we're finishing it? Because that was the last card in this set review. Final thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, final thoughts on this. I think that there's some really super playable cards in this one. Again, there's a lot of cards that are very specific, have very limited usage. That's kind of just like the, sort of like the thing I'm going to have to say at the end of all of these series, or the end of all of these videos. But yeah, there's some seriously playable cards in here. Withering Wisps, Jeweled Amulet, Altar Bone, Fire Covenant. Let's call him that one.
I think Fire Covenant. As far as talking about what we feel that the best card out of this is, I think for me it's got to be snow-covered lands aside. It's got to be Fire Covenant, Phyrexian Ironfoot, or not Zur's Weirding. That would feel like a bit of a cop out. But probably Fire Covenant, Phyrexian Ironfoot, and Withering Wisps.
The card I'm really, really impressed with Magus of the Unseen, and another card that I really want to see, like, it's probably not me because they're not really my favorite colors, but somebody build something with Orcish Lumberjack. Like, just, that card's awesome. You know, needs to see some play, for sure.
Oh, don't worry. We'll make sure he sees some play all right. Anyways, folks, that has been episode 2 of Hidden Gems, Ice Age Block. Thank you for joining me yet again, Adam.
Yeah, no problem. This was awesome.
And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And we hope to see you next time when we tackle Mirage Block.
I'm really looking forward to that. Mirage Block has some of my favorite cards in Magic.
Yeah, that set, the thematic kind of feel of that set. I mean, Ice Age has a really good one. But for Mirage, I really love Mirage. Really do. Really
Visions is one of my all-time favorite Magic sets. It has some amazing cards in it.
I do apologize, though, because when we get there, if the shift from competitive or technical applications gets overshadowed by Adam and I just going, take a look at this fucking art, my god.
Yeah, oh yeah, we're serious fanboys for Mirage Block.
Yeah. Fun little fact, everybody is kind of tilting their hands up and looking in a certain direction. Shoutouts to Robin for pointing that out to me a while ago. It's not actually dead, you guys. He just moved. And, you know, it's just made me a better person ever since.
Anyways, guys, yeah, thanks for listening to us ramble about weird cards.
Yeah, thank you very much, and hope to catch you later. Bye now. Oh, you know what, Adam? We forgot to touch on Pyrokinesis and Scars of the Veteran, the red and white Force of Wills.
Thank you for watching, and if you like that, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more hidden gems, set reviews, deck techs, and much more. Also be sure to follow our Canadian Highlander Facebook page, and check out our newly updated website at canadianhighlander.wordpress.com. Links for our various podcasts will also be included in the description below. Thanks again, and feel free to leave any questions, comments, or concerns, and one of the council members will be sure to answer as best as they can. And remember folks, there can be only one.